Hey everyone, Wolf Lord Rho here. Today, we are ranking the likelihood of loyal Primarch betrayals. Who would be the most and least likely to turn from the Emperor's light? No real need for a spoiler warning today, as we're just having a fun what-if conversation. And obviously, none of these Primarchs are ever going to betray the Emperor. We're just having a bit of fun. And we're all of course certain that our personal favourites should top the list of loyalty. So this is going to be a tricky one for sure. As usual, drop your own rankings in the comments below, with which loyal Primarch you think would be the most likely to turn against the Emperor. And for this ranking, I'm going to begin with the least likely to the most. And so, beginning at number 9, the loyal Primarch I think would be the least likely to ever betray the Emperor. Rogal Dawn. I know, everyone's crying out that it's another Primarch instead. And whoever isn't is probably just surprised that I haven't said Leman Russ here. And again, it's a no-win situation. There's a bunch of names that could have easily gone here, and I was very tempted by the next two that I've gone with, to say the least. But I've ended up on Rogal, honestly probably because of the effort he put in during the Siege of Terror. Not to mention the entire heresy. His complete and utter unwavering steadfast duty and loyalty to his father. You could argue Rogal had it easiest out of all the Primarchs during the heresy, upon the throne world the entire time, alone privy to the Emperor's predicament and the true goings-on, that he never faced a true test of loyalty like each of his other brothers did. And you would have a point. However, you could argue in return that that's only further evidence of the Praetorian's loyalty, because he was there, alone chosen by the Emperor, his Praetorian. And that means something. It means a lot. Yes, Horus Lupercal was War Master, and we know how that turned out. But still, Rogal alone was trusted with what the Emperor was truly doing beneath the palace. And there was just never any question of Rogal turning. None. No matter what revelation he faced, no matter what conflict with Malcador erupted, or what harsh and brutal decision he was forced to take. It was just a given, never a question, that Rogal was going to stand true. He was going to do his duty. And I just can't see any way he was ever going to turn from the Emperor's light, side against his father. It's really hard for me to envisage it happening. A scenario on how it could have transpired. This is a guy who spent lifetimes upon lifetimes being tempted by the Blood God, and he still didn't fall. A guy who ice-coldly slew a traitor brother with no hesitation, and a son who would grieve like no other in the heresy's aftermath, for feeling like he failed. And so it doesn't matter if it was within the Great Crusade or the Horus Heresy, or even if it was a Rogal return within the current universe. Rogal Dawn, for me, gets the nod as the least likely loyal Primarch to ever betray the Emperor. Now, moving on. Next in 8th, as the next least likely or most likely Primarch to betray the Emperor, I have Lionel Johnson. I had the Lion nailed on for 9th, before a late swaying to Rogal. The Lion, quite simply, was the paragon of loyalty to the Emperor, a fact made all the more remarkable by the fact his heresy actions were a mystery for the first decade of the setting, teased within the Angels of Death Codex to maybe have sat the heresy out to see which side was going to win. And how times changed. With the words loyalty is its own reward, the Lion shattered the mystery of old and showed us a Primarch who placed loyalty to the Emperor above everything else. Everything. He didn't care in the slightest what others thought of him, only that he remained loyal to his father. It was and is the only thing Lion L. Johnson cared about. We saw him head to Ultramar, ready and willing to put down the ambitions of Guilliman, and we saw the Emperor not doubt his actions in the slightest. And why would he? For the Lion is quite possibly the one Primarch who knew of Chaos's existence, the one who was able to resist them from the very beginning, the Primarch who denied their whispers. And when he awoke 10,000 years later, his first instinct was to reach the throne world to see his father. The Lion is prideful. The Lion is ruthless. He is dangerous. But when it comes to his father, he is simply loyal. With his mental psychic defenses, aloof relationship with the other Primarchs, and his absolute dedication to the Emperor, it's hard to see any circumstance that the Lion could have been turned. However, moving on, the next Primarch I have is the Wolf King Leman Russ. Russ was the Emperor's go-to man when another Primarch stepped out of line, when a scolding was simply not going to be enough. The Executioner embraced and took this role seriously, feeling it his duty to safeguard the loyalty of the legions for his father. And it was a role the Emperor fully supported, telling Malcador that Leman was one of the few Primarchs he knew would never fall. Never. Backing him even in his desire to head into the heart of the enemy to face the corrupted War Master. And the Emperor came to Russ in a dream post-Heresy's aftermath, telling him to protect the Imperium. Thus far the only Primarch we know that this transpired with. And Russ and his Legion certainly appear to be the Legion most designed to be the anti-psyker force, possessing several anti-psychic traits, including Russ's Howl, which gives off a blinding psychic shockwave, which all lands him in great stead to resist any form of corruption and temptation. And so there's no way I could have had Russ any higher on this list. A Primarch who kept his brothers at arm's length, in case he needed to take them out. I mean, come on, that is loyalty. Moving on into 6th, the next Primarch betrayal I have is the Gorgon Ferrus Manus. I know, this is maybe going to surprise some people, and the rest of you probably forgot about Ferrus entirely. However, we cannot overlook the fact that Ferrus was not swayed to treachery or betrayal 1 inch by his closest friend and brother Fulgrim. In fact, all it did was make him irate at the very thought of him betraying his father. That Fulgrim could have even thought it was going to be a possibility. And that speaks of the Gorgon's loyalty, becoming infuriated at the mere notion of it. And love Ferrus or hate him, he was adamantine in his resolve. And though the Lion is the most likely candidate for the Primarch told of Chaos, Ferrus, in my opinion, is a very possible alternative. Medusa is always overlooked for how close to the Eye of Terror it is itself, And the fact that Ferrus came away from it as, no pun intended, ironclad as he is, well, that speaks for itself. If Ferrus was ever going to fall or turn, you would imagine it would have to do with the blood god and his temper. However, honestly, it was such a righteous one, and he was moved so little by the appeals of a brother he loved. I think you have to say that Ferrus earned and deserved his spot low down on the list here, even over other more popular Primarchs. Now up into the 5th placed most likely loyal Primarch betrayal, Vulcan. The big man was willing to do the ultimate duty at the very end, all for his father. Vulcan is a bit different to the other Primarchs here, in that he doesn't wear his loyalty upon his sleeve. He doesn't scream his loyalty from the rooftops, or chastise others for not showing it enough. He didn't even want to be a warlord, but he does it all as a son of the Emperor. And because he knows his father does everything he does for the sole purpose of humanity. And in that respect, Vulcan is more like the Emperor than anyone else. Vulcan had conversations with the Emperor that perhaps only Vulcan could have, and saw an aspect of his father in return that only he did. You could argue that perhaps if Vulcan could have been convinced turning against the Emperor was the best thing for humanity, that he would have. And maybe so, but I don't think you could ever convince him of that being true. He's too pure a soul. And for all his father's mistakes, perhaps Vulcan of all the Primarchs understood the Emperor's intent and hopes the best. And so there's arguments to be made here, I'll admit, which is why he's here and not lower. But I certainly couldn't have put Vulcan any higher. However, moving on, in 4th, probably my most controversial one, the Angel Sanguinius. I can hear the calls already for the Angel to have been down in 9th. And again, this is just a what-if ranking here. None of these Primarchs would ever have betrayed the Emperor in truth, Sanguinius included. He did more than enough to prove his loyalty, giving his own life as the ultimate sign of it. However, in the impossible task of trying to think how any of these Primarchs could perhaps turn against the Emperor, Sanguinius does have a chink in his armour that the rest of them don't. And that's his thirst, his fury, his rage. Let's not forget Sanguinius was fearful of his bloodline's flaw being exposed, it being wiped out by the Emperor, like the fate of the lost legions. And he did everything he could to hide it from the galaxy, hide it from his father. Yes, the Angel more than proved his loyalty after this in the heresy, but still, the lie is there, the fear of his father's judgment. What would have happened had the Emperor ordered the Blood Angels expunged? Would Sanguinius have accepted this fate, and that of his sons? Or would a small, tiny part of him resisted? Would the line of the needless slaughter of his legion been too far for the Angel? I don't think we could say with 100% certainty the Angel wouldn't have resisted, wouldn't have fought for his sons, told his father he's wrong, which, whatever way you slice it, would have led to betrayal. I mean, heck, let's look at how Magnus ended up on the side of the traitors. The fates are not always kind, spiralling out of control from the best of intentions. And though Sanguinius always denied the blood god, he would forever fly close to the edge. Who's to say if pushed too far, fighting for his sons' lives against his father, that edge wouldn't have been crossed? Who knows? However, for me, the fear of the Emperor expunging his legion, actively hiding the flaw, at least provides a possible avenue for betrayal that no other Primarch had. And so, that's why the Angel surprisingly has to end up here. On to third, I have Roboute Guilliman. Roboute will forever be the Primarch I first fell in love with as a kid, marvelling at his legend in the old school Ultramarines codex. And he will forever be in my top 5 favourite Primarchs of all time because of it. And if any Primarch has proven his loyalty beyond a shadow of a doubt, it is Guilliman, who has single-handedly saved the Imperium twice, during the Scouring and now, who has shouldered that burden and continued on in his father's name. And that's even more profound in the current timeline, where we have a Guilliman who is disillusioned by what the Emperor has become, and who, unknowing of the Emperor casting away his humanity before his final duel with Horus, feels the Emperor now exposes the truth in that he never cared for the Primarchs, never saw them as sons, only tools. And though Guilliman fights for humanity still, in the Emperor's name, does it possibly expose a route to a theoretical betrayal? Could Guilliman, in his fear of what the Emperor has become, is becoming, feasibly decide that it's in humanity's interests that the Emperor was disposed of, removed, that their fate should be left to be governed by themselves, as the man the Emperor was intended? While it would of course never happen, you could at least say Guilliman's fear of the Emperor doesn't make it an impossibility, as we've at least seen him discuss the option of healing the Emperor, trying to restore him to the man he was previously. What if the situation only got worse? The actions of this God Emperor became more erratic, more dangerous, or he began to do things Guilliman couldn't countenance. I think in that way you would inevitably see Guilliman decide to turn against him, to take matters into his own hand. And whatever way you look at it, that would class as a betrayal. And so that's why Guilliman has to end up here. I think that's the only real option for a Guilliman betrayal, because although some people would point to Imperium Secundus, I truly think Guilliman did all of that, including his expansion of Ultramar now, with complete loyalty in his heart, evidenced by his guilt every time Imperium Secundus is mentioned. And so, despite his supreme loyalty to the Master of Mankind, I think the rise of the God Emperor at least opens a path to a theoretical betrayal. However, now on to second place. As the second most likely loyal Primarch betrayal, I have the Raven Lord Corax. And honestly, I've surprised even myself by having Corax here. His relationship with the Emperor is often one I reference as one of the best. How it appeared the Emperor had a good relationship with him, the lengthy conversation they had during their reunion, the Emperor speaking to him directly upon the Raven Lord's return to the throne world post-Istvan, and Corax then being trusted with the secrets to rebuild his legion. So why on earth would I have him this high? Well, I'd put it solely on his reaction to finding out the warp was used to make the Primarchs. It's inescapable. Corax took that revelation hard, especially so with the mutated suns that his own experiments led to him creating. He essentially abandoned the Imperium because of it, casting himself away into the Eye of Terror, believed to be hunting his traitor brothers, at least given his last sighting. So it's clear Corax has struggled with these events. And so for me, can we really say it's impossible to wonder if he could have turned against the Emperor in reaction to this instead? It may not have been likely, but I think we could say it isn't impossible. The Emperor hid their warp nature from them, and Corax could have very easily reacted negatively towards his father because of it. And so for me, that's why Corax belongs here. And so that brings us on to number 1. The loyal Primarch most likely to betray the Emperor, Jaghatai Khan. If you know anything about me, you know I love the White Scars and their Primarch. Almost as much, if not as much, as Russ and the Wolves themselves. Yet he still has to go here as number 1. Even the Emperor doubted the Khan, telling Malcador to watch him, and their tense estranged relationship is well known. It was a genuine choice for Jaghatai on where to side, and I think it could have very easily have gone the other way. The Khan despised the lie of the Imperial truth, even though he later came to believe the Emperor was right to do it, given the horror of chaos. And he even went searching for Horus's soul while lying upon his deathbed, revealing how much he loved his brother Lupercal. Still, after it all. So I really don't think there's much debate here. Yes, Jaghatai stood on the walls at the end, proved his loyalty beyond question. But it could very easily have gone the other way. The meeting with Magnus on Prospero, the abandoning of Russ to the Alpha Legion, the contest against Mortarion, and then the tense reunion with Russ after his return. All forks in the road that could have altered the Khan's path irrevocably. And so for me, he rightly has to go number 1, as the loyal Primarch who would be most likely to betray their father. But as usual everyone, what do you think? What are your personal rankings in this what if conversation? As usual, drop your thoughts in the comments below. A huge thank you to all my subscribers, your support truly means a lot to me, it really does. If you're new, please consider subscribing to help the channel grow. And if you enjoyed this particular vid, then why not drop a like on it too? But with that said, I am off, and I'll see you all again real soon.